What's up, everyone? I am thrilled that you guys are here joining me today for this kind of new format I'm trying on the Katie Type A channel. I want to bring some of my favorite people, thought leaders, creatives, and fellow YouTubers on to really just talk to them about the real stuff, things that are going on in their life, projects they're excited about. And so this is kind of a new thing. If you guys are interested in seeing some of the lineup and just kind of staying tuned in terms of who's going to be coming on the show next, you can always head over to katietypea.com/events, and I'll be listing everything there today. So I am really thrilled because we have a fantastic YouTuber, biohacker, and just all around amazing human here joining me today. This is Kyle Got Camera, Kyle Lasoda. If you aren't already familiar with his beautiful face, he's a videographer, he's a biohacker, an entrepreneur, a lifestyle enthusiast, and of course, a sleep expert. And as I mentioned, he is a fellow YouTuber. You should definitely check him out if you guys are not already subscribed. He's at Kyle Got Camera. And in case you also didn't know, Kyle also has a fantastic sleep course, which I've taken. I've absolutely gotten so much out of, and it's called the Sleep Advantage. And there is another one in the works, and this one's going to be on time management, which is definitely something I could always use help with. And we'll get to all of that in just a sec. But I just want to say, welcome, Kyle. I'm so thrilled, so honored to have you here.
Hey, it's my pleasure. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for providing the platform.
Yeah, I mean, this is what YouTube's all about. It's about collaboration, community, meeting like-minded people, sharing new ideas, and hopefully, helping people with their journey through health, wellness, and all that. Anyway, for today's particular interview, we're going to try to keep things structured. So I did mention there's going to be a little bit of Q&A session. So the way I kind of want to break things down is we've got a couple of topics that we're really excited to talk about, including time wealth. We're going to talk about stress and what Kyle in particular does to manage his stress. And he has his HRV numbers like consistently in the hundreds. So I want to get a little bit, have him unpack some of his secrets for us on that. And then, of course, we're going to close out on sleep and sleep trends, sleep hacks, all of the gadget stuff. And so we're going to kind of break it out in chunks. And so after every kind of different section, we'll open it up for some questions, and then obviously at the end as well. So that being said, getting all of that out of the way, I am thrilled to talk to you about this idea of time wealth. And this is kind of going to be the first sort of like rabbit hole we go down. But you recently talked to me about this new idea, this new philosophy that you are kind of helping get off the ground. It's called time wealth. And I would love for you to just kind of unpack for this audience, like, what is the time wealth philosophy? What does it mean? And, what is what's the approach that you're taking in creating this new idea?
Well, it's really funny because I just had an interview with the guy who kind of inspired this for me. So when I was 21, I had a mold infection. I was really sick. I didn't understand what was going on. And I wanted to start my videography business. And I found this guy named Ari Mizell, who owns a company called Less Doing. And Ari talked about he had Crohn's disease, and that was brought on by stress. And he kind of linked stress to his autoimmune condition. And he was able to put his autoimmune condition in remission by lowering his stress through outsourcing basically everything in his life and business. When he asked himself the question, if you could only work for 1 hour a day, like how would you like organize your business? And so that idea really stuck with me, and it started to germinate over the course of the last couple of years. And I started designing things in a way that were very intentional, that would set me up to continue to make money and grow my business while not having to spend more time. And I stumbled across this interview that Tim Ferriss did with the guy from who wrote Vagabonding, and they were talking about this concept called time wealth. And basically, it's like you could be like wealthy and rich, but you may not have the time. And then what's the point of having the money? And time is really the only resource that we don't get more of and is non-renewable, and therefore it is the most valuable. So to optimize for anything other than time would be to sort of miss the point, because it's within our time that we get to experience what life really has to give us, right? And if you're too busy, or if you're always working, or whatever, there's just there's not going to be time to experience the things that you want to experience. And for me, the journey has been, how do I create a business and a lifestyle that allows me the time basically to take care of myself? Because having these practices, like a meditation practice, like a consistent gym practice, like spending time with friends and being in nature, it's like that requires you to have some time, and I think in Western culture, especially in Western culture, there is a ethos that underpins basically all of the society. It's just like, do more, work harder, and I'm just putting my flag in the ground and just saying, hey, there's a different way, there's a better way, and I want to become a time millionaire. Where I'm rich in time and I'm wealthy in time, and that's where this idea of time wealth comes. Is it's not just about having free time, but it's about enjoying the richness in your life that comes from having that amount of free time.
Yeah, I could not agree with you more. And I often think to myself, I just wish I had more time to do all these things. I put, and we always go through this kind of like thing in our head where we're like, oh, well, I'm going to put this off until tomorrow because maybe I'll have more time tomorrow. But then you go in down that like, unfortunate rabbit hole of just constantly pushing things out. And then you end up sometimes focusing all of your attention and time on the things that you aren't as excited about, but you feel like you have to do. And so I'm curious because I know you personally, Kyle. I know all of your systems and operations and how you've outsourced things. And I think it's fantastic. And I have tried really hard to start to incorporate some of your strategies into my own life as a way to kind of mitigate the excess stuff, the admin stuff, the things that we don't really want to deal with or think about in order to basically utilize all of our brain energy and excitement around those creative projects, right? So let's talk about some of the actual strategic ways that you've incorporated time wealth principles into your life right now.
Yeah, the thing that was most profound for me, starting out with like getting started with this type of thing, was I lived with this guy named Kevin, and Kevin was a systems and operations consultant for like 7 and 8 figure companies. And he showed me this thing called the playbook. And the playbook is basically a directory for your business, SOPs and templates and checklists. And so what I did is I started building a system that basically trained someone on how to use the playbook and how to build systems. And then I hired an assistant who knew nothing. She was completely green. And I taught her how to build systems and use the playbook. So now anytime I do something and I repeat it more than once, I record a Loom video, which is a software. It's a free software, plug in your Chrome extension. And I record a Loom video of me doing the thing that I'm repeating doing. And then I send it to her, and she turns it into a system, and then it gets handed off to her. And now it's off my plate. And she might mess it up once or twice because it's a new thing for her. But by nature of her building the system, she kind of gets the gist of it. And then I give her feedback, once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, maybe. And then the system's rock solid and she can just do it. And then that thing is off my plate. So that's kind of like one side of the coin. The other side of the coin, that's like from a business stuff. From a personal perspective, a great place to start. When I lived in the entrepreneur house, we had a chef, right? And so that chef cooked healthy organic meals. And she went to the grocery store. She picked up the groceries. She cooked it. She prepped it, and she delivered it. And it was amazing, right? And when I move into my next place, I'm going to set something up like that similar. But then also beyond that, you could get a maid to clean your house. It's very affordable. And then you could also get someone to do your laundry, or your maid could do your laundry as well. Ideally, in a perfect world, you just have like a house manager and they just take care of all the house stuff, right? And it's sometimes hard for people to conceptualize because it's like, oh, but it's like I'm spending all this money. But if you can use that time that you get back to put into projects that are going to be income generating, and you're going to have so much more energy available. And we're not thinking about just optimizing for financial success and wealth, but we're thinking about how are we optimizing for time, because there's a corollary between time and energy, right? And so when we have more time, it feeds the bucket of energy, right? Because we can fill that time with things that are rejuvenating, that give us energy. And another thing is we only have so many units of energy to spend, as well as units of time. And so when we start to optimize for time and we get time back to do those things that give us energy, then we actually have more capacity to pour into the things that create wealth. So it actually accelerates our money making activity, even though we're putting money down and paying for it.
So one of the things that we had initially talked about when you were kind of, telling me about the time wealth philosophy and what you're going to be doing in terms of coursework was that you do not have to sacrifice your prosperity in order to live this healthier life that is fulfilling and rich. And I think that's kind of similar to my philosophy on like, I have done a lot of biohacking and I've figured out a lot of ways to basically incorporate all these health routines so that you are less stressed and you can be more focused and you can be more productive. Because I know that when your stress levels are down, you are able to kind of get into that flow state so much faster. Anyway, so that being said, like, talk about this idea of making sure that like even if you are budgeting that cost for a chef or a house cleaner, like how does one go about sort of kind of creating this framework in their life so that they're still making sure they're seeking out their success and their revenue and their budget, and is that available to everyone? Is this accessible to everyone? I think about people with kids. I think about people who work 9 to 5 or, are in really intense jobs. And it's hard to, they might be able to afford all of that stuff, but like how then do they kind of balance that time thing? I know that we sort of got a little bit long-winded there,
No,
but let's
I
see
got you though.
if you
Yeah,
can
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of wrap that all up.
I got you. So I think the first place to start is not in like outsourcing and handing things off, but the first place to start is to start auditing your time. So it's simple. You just do 30 minutes every day for like a week or two. You just track your time. Where is it going? What you'll find is there's usually a lot of wasted time. For me, what I discovered is I was wasting a lot of time on social media. Hence why I outsource social media. And I've created boundaries for myself now where I'm not spending as much time on social media anymore, like aimlessly scrolling. And that one hack alone probably give me back, I would say, at least an hour or two a day, right? And so if you have an extra hour or two a day, like what can you spend your time with? Like what can you do in that time, right? Like you could develop a meditation practice. You could go to the gym, 3, 4, 5 times a week. You could, it just opens up so much room for opportunity. So I think the first part is just get really clear on where your time is going and where you're spending your units of time, right? Just like where you're spending your money. If you want to like really get clear on stuff, like you got to like look at the numbers, look at the data. Like if you wanted to get clear on your financials and like clean up your spending habits and stuff like that, you look at your bank account, you look at your bank statement. Where's my money going? Same thing with time. We want to look at where is it going. And once we identify where our time is being spent, we can sort of divide it into quadrants of like what is unnecessary that I don't need to be doing anymore. What is unnecessary for me to be doing but needs to be done, right? What is necessary to get done, but I don't actually wait, hold on. What is necessary to get done and I have to do it? And what is necessary to get done and I want to do it, right? And once we start bucketing where our units of time are going into those categories, then the first category we can just eliminate. We can just cut, right? The next one, we can use software and we can use tools, technology to create basically repeatable processes that don't require a human being. And most of them are actually free or very, very cheap. So we can get started with, things like Zapier, things like different social media automations. Like there's so many tools that we can use that integrate with each other that can basically start getting some of these things off our plate that need to get done, but we don't need to necessarily be doing them. That could be as simple as just automating your finances, like creating like I was just on doing some like Vanguard stuff today for investments where you can set it up so it immediately pulls out of your bank account every month and gets transferred into the fund that you want or the ETF that you want to buy, right? Like that would be an example of an automation that you could set up. And then in the stuff that you have to do, that's where you start looking, and you can't create a software to like take it over and you can't get rid of it, then that's where you start looking at like building a system to make it like more like efficient and effective. And then if you're ready, then you can start looking at hiring someone and bringing them in to do it.
One of the things that literally changed my life was discovering canned templates on Google, which I know now probably sounds, so obsolete. But like when I discovered that a couple of years ago, I felt like I was writing the same emails over and over again, and just the act of typing it out and then sending it, it's like I can automate this somehow. And so there are small little steps that you can take to really fine tune your work time and productivity time so that you are leaning more towards the creative and things that are going to make you more successful and less towards the admin stuff that you could either have an assistant do or you can pretty much automate. So just tell us, for the audience that's listening here, tell us a little bit when the Time Wealth course is going to be coming out, and are you going to be offering some of these kind of, like very specific tools for people to utilize? Are you going to be talking about some of this stuff in the course as well?
Absolutely. I think probably sometime in the new year, the next 6 months or so. Um, and yeah, the idea behind the course is basically the outcome, if someone buys it, is to get 25 to 30 hours a week back so that they can spend it on their health. And they do that through getting rid of the stuff that, doesn't need to be there. And then also starting to build some systems and using technology to automate things. And then eventually hiring some people. I mean, if you just hired a chef and you just hired a cleaner and a maid, that would probably save you 15 to 10 hours or 10 to 15 hours a week minimum, just that alone. So that one thing will get you like halfway there. And then, I mean, people don't even realize how much time is really available for them. It would only cost them a couple $100 a month, and so just think about the yield of that. And I mean, it's just, I'm very excited because I believe it's very attainable for people to achieve sort of what I achieved, because I was, I didn't know how to do this when I first started. And the guy that I just talked to who inspired me, Ari Mizell, he has a family of four, or he's got 4 kids, excuse me. He's got a wife and 4 kids, right? And he runs a very, very successful business, and he works 20 minutes a day.
It's almost unbelievable. It's
I
almost
know.
like I can't really process that. And when you say 30 to like 40 hours back a week, I mean, I don't even know what I would do with that time. So that is probably a great segue into kind of like what your like the time philosophy is so much kind of rooted in this like Tim Ferriss approach of the 4-hour work week. It's super glamorous. It's like, I want that, right? But then what are you going to sit around and watch Netflix
Yeah,
for
I mean, that's the
for your
next.
free time?
That's the
So
next step,
how does
right?
that work? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you got to fill the void, right? And it's something I asked Ari about today in my interview, and that video is going to be going live in a couple weeks, so stay tuned for that. But what he said to me is, you got to pick up a hobby that challenges you, and that there's mentorship built into it. So I think that's really important. The other thing is like he's like an EMT, so he does like 12-hour shifts where he's out there like saving people's lives. So maybe you pick up something like that. He also does woodworking, and he does that, and he also takes his kids to school. And it's like if you're a family person, maybe spending more time with your family. For me, it's all about like building community, optimizing my health, like exploring different hobbies, building like side projects, and like doing creative stuff, maybe traveling. But I think it's good to know like what drives you and like what's inspiring for you. And there is an existential sort of like like I don't know how to say it. There's an existential labyrinth that you kind of have to like go through to like figure out like what do I really want? How do I really want to spend my units of time? Because when you start outsourcing things and you realize you don't have to do all these things, you realize that your identity, your ego was keeping you doing these things, and you're really not that important. And
Yeah.
when you feel like you're not important and there's like you don't have like meaning, then like you could end up in a bad place. So like you want to be very intentional uh about like what is like why do you want to free up this time? And for me, it's to build a healthy lifestyle, to spend time with people I love, to experience the world, to I want to do apprenticeships in like different parts of the world with like different health experts. I want to like learn from them, but not need anything from them. And the beautiful thing about being in that position is there's so few people in the world who need nothing from anyone. And when you need nothing from anyone, it's magnetic. Everyone wants to be around you, and you have nothing but your energy and your love and your resources and your connections to give. And that's a pure place to be, and is a pure thing to give to others as well, and it's a beautiful thing. And so I hope that when people meet me and when they see my content, and as I grow this time wealth for myself, that I can be an example of like someone who doesn't need anything from you, and it's just like, hey, this is what I'm interested in, this is how I want to help people, this is like my biggest contribution to the world. It becomes a much bigger question of, okay, if I can do anything now and I'm not tied to my time isn't tied up and my finances are good, then it's like how I want to spend my time, and it's like, what do I want to give? And I think you start growing to a much bigger place, a much better consciousness where you're not in survival anymore, and you're able to like really think about what's going to be for the greater good of humanity.
Isn't it an amazing feeling when you open yourself up to receiving and you are also in this kind of like highly elevated like energy field where you're just sort of, and I know this sounds very woo, but I've been doing a lot of Joe Dispensa lately, so bear with me. But I think like when you open yourself up to both giving and receiving and that exchange of positive energy, and you also have this really good mindset of like, I take care of my health, I take care of my body, I take care of my spirit and all that stuff. I think it's like you just start to attract all of this, knowledge and information and community and connection. And so I think that's kind of at the core of what you're talking about is sometimes you do have to do a little bit of the deep inner work before you get started on this time wealth thing. However, I think it's totally accessible and available for a lot of people. And it's just a matter of putting that into place before you start to take things off your plate,
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And you don't have to take it to the extreme. Like you could just free up like 5 to 10 hours, and like that could just be enough, and that could be
yeah.
enough time, for you to spend with yourself or to spend with the people you love or whatever it is for you.
Yeah, absolutely. For time's sake here, speaking of time, I think let's switch over to another big subject, which has really been very much at the forefront of your YouTube channel in the,
Mhm.
past few months. And that's, of course, stress, and something that I'm sure a lot of people watching can relate to in terms of having different levels of stress at different times of their life. And so I would love for you to just kind of give us a very quick breakdown of your personal relationship to stress, kind of your past and now your present relationship.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I guess stress has played a really fundamental role in just my health journey. And it was really like the trigger that like really broke me. And it's broken me a couple times. And so I've spent a lot of time thinking about this idea of stress and designing a life that minimizes stress. But now it's not just about minimizing stress, it's also about maximizing resilience, right? So there's so many stressors in the world. There's financial stressors, there's emotional stressors, there's chemical stressors, there's the stress of other people, there's relationship stressors. I mean, there's just so many, like there's, especially because we're exposed to so much, this computer is a stressor, right, on my eyes, and the EMFs and all that stuff, and this social media is a stressor because what it's doing to your brain, and you know uh, everything can be a stressor, right? And so I think in modern day we have to learn strategies and skills to adapt to how the world is changing. And I don't think the human body has caught up very well. And that's why you see a rise in anxiety, depression, autoimmune conditions, so on and so forth. Is people are strung out and overwhelmed, especially with the pandemic and all that stuff. It's a lot. And so my relationship to stress right now is all centered around how do I reduce my stress, like unnecessary stress, like basically like let me get rid of all the chemicals like that people use in their cleaning products. Let me buy like the organic food. Let me do all like sort of this stuff that society now says is just like okay, but was not in existence, like 100 years ago. That is now making us really sick. So let me get rid of all the unnecessary stressors, but then let me intentionally put stress on my body so that I can adapt and become more resilient. Because you can't just live in a cocoon and like meditate all the day, all the time, because like the world is happening, life is outside, and like you need to face that reality. And so for me, I think I'm really focused on. I've been in major recovery, after getting COVID in 2020. It's just been such a process of sort of rebuilding my body, but it has taught me so much about the nervous system, about hormones, about blood sugar, and about like all these things that I would have never really probably learned about if I didn't have to. And now I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of how to manage my stress, and the strategies that I use really center around sleep, circadian rhythm, um, meditation, breath work, and prehabbing and working out, as well as social community and nature. Like those are really the things that I feel like are the the pillars that I'm like using to build my stress up.
It's interesting kind of hearing you talk a little bit about some of, the ways that you've really built this resilience and you've learned through some unfortunate, incidences like getting COVID and kind of dealing with the ramifications of that. But it's been a moment of reflection and kind of self-teaching, which I think is like for anyone going through this, it's hard sometimes to be in that lens of awareness. Like, this is actually going to teach me a lesson down the line. But I think that's a really like profound thing to kind of come out of that and say, well, I've learned all of these things about myself and how to deal with this, and now I'm going to go ahead and teach others. And I think that's really what this whole community of like-minded, people in the health and wellness space are trying to do, is like look at that. And even when you're in the throes of stress, think about like you're going to be out of it, and what are you going to learn? What can you teach from this opportunity?
Yeah, I think the biggest, something that I didn't really realize before that is on the forefront of my consciousness now is like the impact of like your brain, and trauma and your nervous system. And that's why I love the Prehab Dojo is a practice of strengthening the nervous system. And I'm about to start doing neurofeedback to change the way that my brain is firing, because the brain is like the supercomputer and the nervous system is like the superhighway. And so if we can strengthen those two like parts of our body, then we're setting ourselves up for success. But the most profound realization that I've come to this year about health stuff is is really ironic, because the best thing you can do to increase your resilience, in my opinion, from what I've practiced and what I've discovered for myself, is just to work out, and to work out like very consistently, and consistently work out heavier and heavier and heavier, not to the point where you're making yourself inflamed and you're hurting your joints and stuff, but um, slight edge, moving in the upward direction of just getting stronger and stronger and stronger, because the brain and the body are very malleable, and they will change quickly. And exercise is the fastest and most effective way to change your brain and to change your body. And the amazing part is like our brain was literally built to move. And there's this book called Spark, and in the book he talks about how there's this animal called the sea squirt, and the sea squirt has this like huge brain, and it like is like moving around in the ocean, and then it finds a piece of coral or a rock to go on, and then just like bunkers down and hangs out on that rock, and then his brain literally disintegrates and goes away because it stops moving, right? And so the best thing that you could do to build the health of your brain and your nervous system is to move, right? And to move in a way that's going to be right for your body based on where you're at, and to progressively overload over a long period of time. And I think that's the best defense to stress.
I love everything you just said. You were the one who introduced me to Spark, which I highly recommend everybody pick up on Amazon. It's a really great book about also time of day to exercise to basically enhance your productivity and focus. And if you're someone who's like kind of struggles in the morning to kind of get started, or feels like you're in a little bit of that elusive brain fog, honestly, like getting your body moving, and it doesn't have to be an intense workout. Like, I sometimes dance in my living room for 5 to 10 minutes and just move my body, and that wakes me up enough to then sit down, get focused, gear up for the day. And I think that's also something people should think about when they're working on managing stress, is like prioritizing time to move your body in whatever way that really works for you. So kind of moving on to like the quantification of stress. So
Mm.
I know you've looked a lot at, various devices. I'd love to talk with you kind of openly about like what are some of the best ones, honestly, that you found, because I think there's a lot of devices out there now that are like trying to quantify your stress, but I sort of am leery on the accuracy of the metrics. So what's been your experience with that?
Um, I think there's only really two devices that I use like then that I would tell other people to maybe look into, which is just the Aura Ring and the Polar H10. So the Aura Ring is great for just like knowing your numbers when it comes to sleep and like seeing trends over a long period of time. I think it's a really powerful tool for making associations to what affects your sleep. Like for me, I made a huge discovery a couple years ago about how meal timing and your bedtime and the impacts that it has on your ability to stay asleep throughout the night and like be um, undisturbed. That was like a breakthrough, right? Because I learned about the glymphatic system. It's a whole nother rabbit hole that I'm not going to go down. But like basically, it gave me some data that made me realize that if I do this one thing, then I get X, Y, or I get X result. And so of course, sleep is a huge part of the recovery process and making you resilient. But then it gives you the readout of the RMSSD, which is the recovery score for your HRV, your heart rate variability, which is the one metric that I look for how the health of my nervous system, how is it doing? And it's been pretty consistent. And the cool thing that I've noticed is I compare the Polar H10 to the Oura Ring and looked at the RMSSD scores, and consistently they are very, very close, like within a couple numbers. And so for me, that tells me that Oura Ring's HRV RMSSD score is relatively accurate, which is great because it's super low profile, it's pretty affordable. But the Polar H10 is even more affordable. It's $80, and you connect it to the Elite HRV app. And basically, what you do is this can give you real-time HRV. The problem with the Oura Ring is it's giving you, that sleeping HRV, which is great as a recovery metric. But if you want to see how your nervous system is doing in real time, when you're living in real life, while things are happening, then you could put the strap around your chest and you turn it on and you kind of just sit still for 5 minutes, take a quick read, and you could see what's going on with your nervous system. And not only from like a recovery aspect, but you could see if you're in a more parasympathetic state or a more sympathetic dominant state. And that is measured through the low frequency power band and the high frequency power band measurements on the Lead HRV app.
The BioStrap has a very similar thing. And in fact, I've been kind of using that to sort of assess my parasympathetic versus sympathetic state in 5-minute increments, right? Like, so you sit down, you lay down, you stay still. So you shouldn't be jumping around while you're trying to do this. And it does give you some really great kind of like automatic feedback about how you're doing. Now, the question I have for you, if you know that stress is an issue, how often are you checking? Because there is an inherent stress in checking itself.
Totally.
So what's your take on that?
I think once a day is good. I think once a day is good. Depends. If you're an athlete, you might want to check like before your workouts and after your workouts and stuff like that. Or if you're really like you're in the process of like healing something, then maybe like doing it after your prehabbing session or before your prehabbing session or before your meditation, after your meditation. And it just depends on what type of person you are. If that kind of stuff stresses you out, then I think once a day is more than enough, right? And but
What
that's
about time of day, Kyle? Because I
yeah,
know,
yeah. For the Polar H10, first thing upon waking up
isn't that when your cortisol is the highest? So is that like a good metric because it's like it should be peaked at that point?
yes, 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 yes. So I would say that would be a good time to do it, and I would also say like if there is something that is really stressing you out, whether it's a person or a situation, it might be good to do a little check-in before you go into that interaction or before a workout. And the reason being is you can see how that thing in your life is affecting you, and you can start to develop a practice because awareness drives behavior change. And so if you can develop awareness around what's happening, then in that moment you can sort of say, okay, here's I need to insert my practice here, or I need to change this part of my life. And I think that could be really insightful. I know that Leaf Therapeutics has a device. I haven't tried it. I would love to try it, but that will basically, you put it on your chest and it monitors your HRV in real time. When you start feeling stress, it will notify you and it will give you like a prompt to do some breathing exercises. So that's something that people might be able to check out. I can't speak to it because I haven't tried it, but I've heard great things.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of that sort of like interactive kind of wearables
Like
in
biofeedback type stuff.
biofeedback
Yeah.
stuff in the moment started to emerge. Again, I think like I kind of give it the next 3 to 5 years because there really aren't a ton on the market right now. So I always think with some of this new tech, we kind of just have to sort of see where the playing field goes and what technology is going to kind of lend itself to being in terms of accurate data that you're going to get.
I think
So I'm
I think
excited though.
the Muse S actually might be good too as an entry product for people because it is a biofeedback device for meditation, and if you're dealing with a lot of stress, it teaches you how. And you're not good at meditate. Like meditating can be very hard if you're really stressed. So the feedback that it gives you, I think, is good training wheels for how to like get into meditation. And meditation isn't going to make your stress go away, but it's going to help you respond differently and give you some more time before you react. And so if you have more time before you react to that stressful event or situation, you may not like get taken, like your mind might not go with that stressful experience as far as it would normally. And so that might be another piece of technology that people could look into that I think might be valuable.
Yeah, I love it. I just want to repeat what you said there. Like meditation is not going to take your stress away. And I think that is so key because I think a lot of us go into meditation thinking that we're going to be zen and feel great all the time. It's just changing your frequency of like your brainwave patterns and your state and your kind of response time to some of this stress. And the other benefit too, we're not going to go down the meditation rabbit, guys. I'm
Yeah.
just trying to share some information because I think there is a huge misconception about what meditation does for you. But keeping yourself focused in the present moment is also a huge thing that meditation does because you're basically the neurons in your brain are being rewired every time you start to drift off and think about things, and then you have to come back to this like center focused area in your meditation. That is also like a great like launching off point for when you're talking to somebody or you're interacting with something or you're reading a book. Like every time that random thought starts to go and you start to go down and chase it, I think meditation kind of helps train your brain to get back to that center focused grounded area where you're right they're present and focused and in that moment. And that I think is one of the biggest benefits of meditation. But we'll cover that another day. I in wrapping up on the stress stuff, and I want to get to sleep as well.
Mhm.
There's so much I could talk to you about, Kyle. You're just such a wealth of knowledge. But one of the things when we first met earlier this year, I was astonished to see your HRV scores, your nightly ones, according to your Aura Ring,
Mhm.
in the upper 90s to hundreds. I mean, and you were like, "Oh, this was not great. Like I got an 104," and I was like, "I have a 40 for
Yeah.
mine." So it obviously like it's funny when you're comparing, but for you, you've always tended to get those higher HRV scores, which is really impressive in itself. Curious, in dealing with some of the stress that you've talked about, has that number shifted? And then what do you do per se to kind of get it back to that higher state, to get your numbers higher? What do you do on a like daily basis?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, after I got COVID, my HRV was like in the 40s and 50s, which for me, that's like I felt like I was dying, and I had to learn. Like that's why I got so into the HRV. My HRV was really high, and I kind of knew like I was doing things that would make my HRV high, but I didn't really know what I know now. And what I know now is that um, the way that I built my HRV back up, now it's consistently in the right now I've been working out a lot, so it's actually lower than it normally is. It's in like high 80s. But if I take a day for recovery, it will go back up to like high 90s and low hundreds. But right now I'm pushing myself harder in the gym, so my HRV is lower because I'm stressing my nervous system more, which is good. That's what I want, right? Because then adaptation occurs. So the um, the way that I increased my HRV from 50 to the 80 or from 50 to the like 80s and 90s again was through a couple things. Number one would be um, prehubbing was the most effective thing. I would watch my numbers jump sometimes 20 or 30 points after a single session of prehubbing, which is crazy. So if you don't know what the Prehab Dojo is, the Thrive Dojo, we'll link it up somewhere down below or in the description, or I have a bunch of videos on my channel that you can go watch as well. And is basically a mindfulness practice for your muscles, meditation for your muscles, and It's a it's like doing isometric exercises at the lowest intensity possible, and it's a very concentrated effort to create that neurological connection. And so it strengthens the nervous system, and it's also you're laying down, you're breathing gently. It's a very meditative practice in and of itself, and like you're thinking good thoughts, happy thoughts, which segues me into the next one, which is meditation. And I was doing a lot of Joe Dispenza's meditation at the time, and the focus of Joe Dispenza's meditation is all around feeling the emotions and feeling positive states, right? So it's like gratitude and love and joy and bliss and ecstasy and all these really heightened states. And your body doesn't, and your nervous system doesn't know the difference between real and fake. So if you fake those emotions and you generate them, your body is literally experiencing that. And so that when the thing that knocks HRV down is stress, right? And so if you're feeling the opposite, which is like gratitude and love and joy and all those happy emotions, then you're signaling to your body like heal, grow, synthesize, like everything that comes along with repair. And so that is a great practice for recovery and to increase your HRV. Next would be grounding. So just getting your bare feet on the grass or in the sand or on Mother Earth there's plenty of studies that you can look up about the impacts of grounding in HRV, grounding in inflammation, grounding in blood sugar, grounding in thyroid. I mean, the list goes on and on. Connecting to the earth, getting into nature is an amazing way to bump up those numbers. Super simple, as little as like 20 minutes a day. The next thing, these are all things that I did, by the way, to recover and to get better. And they really work. And I put these things through the ringer. Next would be cold showers. Not too cold, especially if you're trying to recover and you're going through something. Like when I was going through like COVID recovery, it was like you got to know, you just got to know, like, you got to listen to your body, and like you got to know, like, can I do this? Can my body handle this? Is this putting too much stress on me? Because cold showers are a stressor, right? But if you get cold on your neck right here and on your face, that helps with vagal tone. That's going to increase your HRV. If you don't know what vagal tone is, look it up. It's very complex. I don't know enough about it to explain, but it's going to increase your HRV to do the cold showers. It will go down at first, and then it will go up. Only do that.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
A little side note, just kind of as like a thing that was really fascinating to me is like cold therapy actually does increase your flow of dopamine as well. I'm a huge fan of Andrew Huberman. I know you are too. He has a great podcast all about like natural ways to increase dopamine in the body. So if you're looking for a way to feel good, lower stress, like I think cold therapy is definitely a fantastic option. I mean, it's also energizing. I think there's, that's partly one of the reasons why is because it's interacting with some of these, neurochemicals in your brain. So I just wanted to like put a little pin in that and just, tell people
absolutely.
If you want to learn more about that and how it's relating to dopamine and some of the other neurotransmitters, like that's a really great resource as well.
Yeah. The next thing would be, so we talk about meditation, grounding, blah, blah. It goes back into, sleep optimization, right? So if you're sleeping really well, like the stuff that I teach, the stuff that I preach, your body just heals and your body recovers so well and so effectively. And when you're recovered and you're healing and you're getting the proper like rejuvenation that you need, your nervous system's going to be strong. And then, I could keep going. I got more, which is just like, again, I said it before, you got to start working out. If you're not working out right now, you got to start. And if you're already working out, it's got to be at the right cadence. You can't be putting too much stress. I was just talking about this with my buddy. It was just like, there's this fine balance between stress, recovery, stress, recovery, stress, recovery. But we can't do all recovery stuff. There needs to be stress in order for adaptations to occur, in order for those HRV numbers to go up.
Absolutely. I would love to talk about sleep because you brought it up and it's something that you and I both, I think, have been like absolutely obsessed with and excited about. And we've tested all the gadgets. And so I'm just curious, like, now that we both kind of been talking about sleep on our channels for a couple of years, like, what are your favorite sleep gadgets like that you still use pretty much nightly? I'm guessing the Aura Ring is probably one of them, but is there anything else that, we should know about?
Yeah. Blue light blocking glasses I'm using Raw Optics right now. I really like their blue light blocking glasses because they have melanin inside the lenses, which is super cool. I I use an air filter. I bring the air filter with me everywhere. HEPA air filter. Um, I am actually using the Hatch Restore, and I'm really liking it. You know, I think that like getting red light bulbs, like the Philips Hue thing, is like ideal, but I'm not in a I haven't like fully planted in my new house, so I'm using the Hatch Restore, and I'm really liking it. It's nice. It wakes me up, and it is super gentle, and um, I would say that 8 sleep, but I haven't been using it because I don't have my bed right now. So 8 sleep is great. Trying to think what else do I use?
I
Oh,
want
my
to I want to quickly ask you about the Hatch Restore because
okay.
I bought it.
Yeah.
I haven't used it. It's like literally in my closet.
Yeah.
And the reason is like I sleep with an eye mask. So I'm
Yeah.
like it's kind of a moot point because I'm not going to wake up to light necessarily. I guess I could use it as a nightlight, but we've got the red hue bulb.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Then it's
what makes it
overkill.
so
It's
it doesn't work if you sleep with
no,
an eye mask?
no. If you sleep on an eye mask and you have the Philips Hue, then you don't need it. Um, but I think it's good for people who don't want to keep their phone in their bedroom and they don't have Philips Hue lights and they don't sleep with an eye mask. Then it's nice for like, you know, winding down because you just turn it on, you turn off your overhead lights, and then you can use it as an alarm to wake you up. And it's really cheap. It's like 150 bucks.
Mhm.
Um, then there's two things that I don't sleep without, like I don't ever have a night's sleep without magnesium. Like, and
Mm.
natural stacks is the one that I love. Yeah, I think it's an absolute game changer. And then the other thing that I've been doing recently that I love, really makes a big difference, is mouth taping. So
Yeah,
I've been
yeah.
mouth taping for sleep, and I think it's a big deal. I think it's a really big deal. I think it's very underrated, and especially people who have sleep apnea and insomnia and like real sleep problems.
Mhm.
I think it could be a game changer. And
Do you ever wake up with dry mouth when you do that? Because I often find that like my mouth is extremely dry upon waking.
mhm.
Maybe that's a sign
after
that
after you after
I'm
you, after you mouth tape, or
yeah, when I wake up in the morning post mouth taping, I'm like, "Oh my
oh,
god, like I
interesting.
feel like I'm like
In a desert.
dehydrated."
Oh, interesting.
Weird, right? Now, that is not to take away from the fact that it
Yeah,
certainly does help with my, respiration numbers that I
yeah,
look at on some of my devices, but I still it's a little bit of that like, oh gosh, like it's a clue, right? Like I always look at this kind of stuff as like if I'm feeling really dehydrated in the morning, well then that maybe means that my electrolytes are out of balance when I'm going to bed.
yeah.
So,
I do cold showers too at bed. I think that's because it keeps your core body temperature down. I know 8 sleep does that because it cools you down too. But like something about a cold shower is like it's sleep hygiene, so it keeps you clean, right? Like as you're getting into bed. But what I learned about cold showers is really interesting. Not only is it good for inflammation, but it's also good for lowering your blood sugar.
mm,
And so when you do cold thermogenesis, it stabilize or it doesn't stabilize, but it brings your blood sugar down. So if you have metabolic issues, cold thermogenesis might be advantageous, especially if you're waking up between 3 and 5 in the morning. Because if you're waking up between 3 and 5 in the morning consistently, probably means you have some blood sugar instability issues. And what
right,
happens
right.
is when you have blood sugar instability issues, the cortisol gets dumped to regulate that blood sugar. And that cortisol wakes you up, and then you can't, and then you're like awake, and you can't go back to sleep. And
Mhm.
usually there's a bunch of reasons why that could be happening, but the cold showers will help bring down the blood sugar before you go to bed and stabilize things a little bit. So that is something that I put into practice. Once I recovered a little bit from COVID and I was a little bit more stable, I I was using cold showers to keep me asleep through the night because my metabolic system got totally derailed post COVID. And so I've been correcting it, and now it's a lot better, and I can stay asleep through the night, and it's no problem. But that's something I had to learn is that, um, the cold showers will really help with that.
Yeah, I've been I would say maybe 3 to 5 times a week doing infrared sauna therapy,
Yeah,
then cold showers.
nice.
I can only get my temperature. We live in Hawaii right now, and it only gets so cold. It's
Yeah,
not the same that you would get like living in California or probably Austin. You probably get a lot colder water. So that's the only like point of frustration I have is like I wish I could get really cold. But I think just work with what you have for right now. There's also ice vests that you can use. There's the 8 sleep that you alluded to that like can actually literally cool your body, your
The AC
bed
gets
down.
so cold. Oh my
I've
god.
woken up in the middle of the night
Because it was too cold. Yeah,
freezing.
me too.
Yeah.
Me too. Me too. So you got to get it just right. The 8 sleep is
Yeah.
you got to dial it in.
Well, they have the autopilot mode thing for that reason right
Yeah.
now, which is a really cool feature. And I sometimes get like updates throughout the day, like, "Hey, we're adjusting your nightly temperature
Oh,
because we
cool.
saw the room temperatures like really hot or really cold." And so I think that like kind of speaking to like sleep industry trends, I think we're starting to like branch into this new territory where things are going to become even more personalized, even more customized, and some of these devices hopefully will lean themselves to being able to kind of measure your type of sleep and what are some of the best like practices to incorporate into your life to like ensure you're getting the best sleep. Because I think this maybe segues to kind of like us talking a little bit about the future of the sleep track industry. But I love my Aura ring, and I have noticed that just based on the proprietary algorithms that they use, like they want me to be getting 8 hours of sleep every night. That's like the gold standard, right? I don't. Naturally, I'm like 6.5 to 7, and I'm fine. I'm crushing life. Like that is when I don't necessarily need the 8 hours. And I think like for some people it might be more, for some people it might be less. And so where do you think some of these tracking systems and wearables are going to go to? And I think it's going to be more personalization, but I'm just kind of curious from your perspective, like what's the industry going to look like in the next 5 years?
I think what we're going to see is absolutely personalized health is just going to transform the entire health space. Like you're going to know in real time, like what your heart rate variability is doing. You're going to know like what foods you should be eating and what you shouldn't be eating based on your gut and what's in your microbiome. You're going to be knowing exactly what nutrients you're deficient in. And you'll have a custom supplement that has all the vitamins and minerals that you need specifically. You're going to be able to see your blood glucose in real time, know exactly what's going on with your metabolic health. You're going to be like, I mean, it's just every part of your health is there's going to be data, and you'll have personalized, basically, uh, like solutions. And then in addition to that, there's going to be a lot more preventative sort of stuff happening where uh, basically the devices will tell you, hey, if you keep going in this trend, like you might be at higher risk of developing this type of disease or disorder, or you've been deficient in this nutrient for a long time, and people who are deficient in this nutrient have these types of problems. And I think I think people, it's hard for me to say because I don't know if people actually want to be healthy. You know what I mean? But I think if
That's a
people,
bigger issue,
it's a
I
bigger
think.
issue, right? But I think if people knew, if people were empowered with the right data, I think more people than not would choose the healthier choice,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Because for me, I think about the choices that I was making versus the choices that I'm making now, just from the little data that I have from like my Oura ring and sometimes the HRV measurements I do. And like if I track my blood glucose or if I'm like taking pictures of my food and stuff like that, then I just, it didn't happen overnight, it happened over years. But like I'm just a different person now, and I make
Yeah.
different choices, and I'm continuing to grow into a healthier person, even with like the challenges that I had. And I think I hope that the world will become more conscious about what's going in their body and how they take care of themselves. And I mean, my whole, like, I mean, one of the reasons why I do what I do is just to help people, make those kind of decisions and invite them into a world where they don't have to betray their body
Yeah.
and and
Yeah.
and and do what I did to myself. You know what I mean? So
I think like how do we make things effortless? How do we make things so that they're seamlessly incorporated into people's lives and they're doing the correct health practices for their body without them even realizing it? That's going to take a sea shift and a huge change in the way we think about our sleep, and we, kind of like there's got to be a lot of education that's going to kind of have to come out. I think a lot of it's going to just start sort of grassroots, like we've seen in recent years. But I think people are going to get smarter. I really think people are going to start to notice, I don't feel good. What's going on? And I hope that people don't have to wait till that breaking point where they're like, I have to figure something out. I really hope that it starts to seamlessly like integrate into some of these more, like
Well,
communities that
think
people
about
can.
think about this. Like Aura Ring just raised $100 million.
Right, right.
So it's like, what does that say about like where
Hmm.
things are going? To me, that's very promising. It's like
Absolutely. Yeah.
people are more stressed than ever. Fucking, I'm sorry, mental health issues are on the rise. Like basically everything that is, all these indicators are showing that like sickness and disease and these types of issues are getting worse. But the awareness around like how to fix it is growing. And I think
Yeah.
with like what the stuff that you're doing, the stuff that Shervin's doing, the stuff that I'm doing, the stuff that people like Ben Greenfield and Dave Asprey and all these people in the space are doing is just raising awareness, and
Hmm.
making it cool, right? And changing culture around like what is socially acceptable and what's not, and what's cool. And I think once people just start to see it as being cool, and you have people like, Michael Phelps and LeBron and icons like this, and even Kim Kardashian like wearing the
I
Oura
knew
ring,
you were
like
going to bring that up. I was
like
like just biting my tongue.
I mean, as cheesy as it is, and like
She's a
it's weird
public
that
influencer.
yeah,
She,
she's
I
a
mean,
public.
people,
She's,
yeah.
so that's a big deal, and I think like it's little steps like that that are gonna like slowly move people in that direction.
I'm right there with you. I want to take a couple moments to just kind of wrap up with a couple of questions that we actually got, including one from Helene. And this was very interesting. I'm not sure if you've heard about the Humanity app. I think this might have a little bit of something to do with either meditation or maybe what we talked about with time wealth. Is this familiar to you, or maybe you could speak to this?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
The question is the
Oh,
Humanity app.
the
Have you ever
Humanity
heard
app.
of this?
No, I haven't. Have you?
I haven't, but I just want to say shout out to Helene. I'm going to definitely look into it and see what it's all about. And maybe this could be a potential product review. But that's cool. I love that people have different apps that they're utilizing and ways that they're incorporating technology in their life in whatever way kind of like fits their needs. I think we have another thing from Jasper about how do you think about balancing your time between your health and then pursuing your passion projects? And I know this is very much related to the time wealth thing that we talked about.
Mm. Yeah, this is a tough one. I mean, it's just like what's more of a priority, if you're not having any health issues or anything major to like focus on, and you're just in maintenance mode, then maybe pursuing your passion projects is going to give you more juice. And there's an argument to be made that pursuing your passion is actually one of the healthiest things that you can do. So you're just living in a state of joy and like and flow and excitement and passion, right? And as we know, when we're feeling those emotions, our body responds appropriately, right? And so I think they go hand in hand. And I don't think you could lose either way as long as you're having fun doing either one of them, right? Because if you're doing the health stuff and it's not fun, it feels like a chore and it feels like all this effort, then and it's not something you really enjoy, then I think uh, you're kind of missing the point, and you might not get the yield that you're trying to get from the habits and the practices that you're practicing.
I absolutely agree. And I think there's also a way that you can kind of incorporate some of the health stuff into your flow of what you're pursuing as a passion project too. I think, it all comes kind of back to this idea of being mindful and having this level of self-awareness of, if am I sitting at a desk all day long and I'm not getting up and I'm not moving my body, I'm not getting sunlight, I'm not drinking water, then I would maybe, question like how deep are you into this passion project and how can you start to create systems for yourself to basically help you kind of navigate your way through enjoying the passion pursuit that you're doing, but also making sure that you're just taking care of your fundamental needs as a human. I think that's also a really key thing to think about when you're kind of in that flow state. last but not least, we're coming up on the end of the hour, the Sleep Advantage course. Tell us a little bit about what you offer and where can people find it?
Yeah, you can find it at thesleepadvantage.co, and it focuses on three main pillars. So first is programming your circadian rhythm, which to me is the most important part of sleep optimization. It's like balancing your energy throughout the day by regulating the two chemicals that control your sleep and wake cycles, which is melatonin and cortisol. The second part is going to be building a sleep oasis, so it's creating an environment that induces you into sleep. And then the third part is going to be creating custom sensory anchors. So using your five senses to build routines into your evening routine that again induce you into sleep. So basically, they're like micro habits that you stack on top of each other, and it just creates triggers that make associations in your body and in your brain that send off chemical messengers that get you ready to fall asleep and get you to stay asleep throughout the night.
And I can attest, like, I thought I knew so much about sleep, and then I took the Sleep Advantage course, and I am continuing to learn and grow from some of the skills you shared. So, like, I definitely recommend everyone check it out if you're looking to enhance or improve your kind of like sleep quality over time. So, this is it, wrapping up on the end of the hour. Thank you so much for kicking off the inaugural, YouTube live right here. If you haven't already, make sure you check out Kyle's YouTube channel. It is fantastic at Kyle Got Camera. And if you want to see some future events that I have planned for YouTube Live, you can always check that out at katietypea.com/events. And I can't wait to catch you guys on the next one.
Thanks, Katie.